Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Teachings of Joshua Roundtable. I'm your host, Gary Temple Bodley. Today, we're going to talk about the ego. How does the ego work? It protects the persona. What's the persona? Well, we're going to figure that out today when we talk about a question from Allyson. Allison's having a really good time. She's going through the boot camp, and she's feeling totally different and alive and engaged and has these periods of joy and everything, and she's telling herself, I'm doing a great job at this, I'm doing good at this. Now, she wonders, is that the ego coming through, or is that her higher self coming through? And today, we'll dissect what Joshua has to say about it. On the round table, we have Kyla Hinton. Hi, Kyla.
Hi, Gary.
And Tracy DeLuise. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Gary.
And Mark Shahada. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And
hello.
Wendy Pierce. Where's Wendy?
Catalina.
Where's Wendy?
Oh,
Where is Wendy?
Wendy's at a,
She was just here.
Wendy's at a wedding.
Oh, she had to rush off to go to the wedding. Okay.
Yeah, she should be right back. Hopefully we'll see her.
She'll be 5-10 minutes.
You know, the wedding, how long is that going to take? Can't take that long, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Catch the wedding and then get back and finish the podcast.
That's right. Well, what's really more important, your son's wedding or this podcast?
I mean, she does have a responsibility to us, doesn't she?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more people listening to this podcast than going to that wedding.
I think so. She's not going to become a star.
There's not going to be 6 million people at that wedding, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Wendy's got a lot of millions.
That's true. If you can count all the non-physical, then you're right. Yep. So how's it going with you guys this week? Okay, you can't nod. This is a podcast.
I expected everybody else to do the talking.
Yeah. No, we're having fun. It's nice and cool in North Carolina. Beautiful sunny weather. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Spring
Beautiful.
looks like it's coming.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're having fun here. And we're going to go on the Law of Attraction cruise in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking
That's
forward
going
to
to be
that.
fun.
Yeah.
Yep. And so if you're listening to this and you still want to go on the cruise, you probably have to drop in by helicopter because we're going to be out in the ocean. Oh, messed up.
Are you bringing the helicopter this time?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yep. You know, if I get chased off the ship, I don't want to go in a lifeboat. I'm going to go in the helicopter.
oh yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
You know, people like chasing you like for autographs and stuff like that? Or
Mostly, yeah. Yep.
mostly?
You know, we're going to have a big event here at the North Carolina House in October 10th through the 14th, I think it is. That is some weekend, so that Monday is a holiday. And
Columbus Day.
So we'll have people fly in. We'll pick them up at the airport. We'll bring them to the house. There's 3 bed and breakfasts around here. So we're going to reserve all those. People can stay at this house or the bed and breakfast. They're really beautiful places. And we're going to have this totally cool event. We'll do some meditation, some yoga, some Joshua Live, lots of cooking, lots of drinking wine, lots of outdoor fires and wine tastings and all kinds of cool stuff.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll get the details out about that sometime around the beginning of October. That's how this rolls around.
Perfect.
We don't we plan things in advance, but we don't really get around to talking about them until it's right upon us.
That's how we roll, right?
That's how we roll. Yep. Yep. Well, so keep that in mind. And if you would like to have more information on that, you can send me an email to joshuateachings@gmail.com. And that will inspire me to create something, right? If I get an email, then I'll have to respond to somebody. And I can just respond to everybody. Anyway, that's like 7 months from now. So
Yeah.
And that's like, what is it, 3,000 a person to go if you want
well,
to go?
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you stay, if you're staying here at the house with me, that's going to be like a lot, right?
Right. A lot.
VIP.
It's going to be
A lot.
A lot.
That's going to be in super high demand.
That's true.
Why are you laughing?
In agreement. In agreement.
No,
Laughing in
probably-
agreement.
Probably people would say, we want to come, but we don't want to stay in the house with you. That's
You
too
think
much.
they're going to say that?
Yeah.
No way.
I don't know.
No way.
No way.
We'll see.
I mean, unless they don't want to have fun, they're going to stay
No,
at
it's
the.
going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really fun. And we're
I
gonna
think
cook
the
a
house
lot.
is all booked up anyway already.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
So we
Mhm.
have this bed and breakfast across the street.
They're going to be
called-
fighting.
What's the one across the street called? The
Holly and Ivy Inn.
my God, these people did such a spectacular job of designing the interior of this house. It's a beautiful house anyway, and they went through and redid all the rooms. It's incredible. And then there's another one down the road, and then our friend Andrea is going to have 2 rooms in her house, which is half a block from here. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll probably have enough room. It's 5, like for 20 or 30 people.
Man,
Yep. It's gonna
you
be
guys
fun.
been hanging around a lot with Andrea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrea and Chris.
Yeah.
They're
that's
both
awesome.
in the boot camp in the second group, and they're having a good time.
Yeah.
Things are changing for everyone.
Yeah.
We had dinner with them last night, and Andrea invited her mom and her son's wife, and Chris came. And Andrea's mom said, "You're the happiest I've ever seen you," which she's never said that to her before.
Wow.
And her son said the same thing to Chris or to Tracy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So it's pretty cool.
All right.
Yep.
Chalk it up to some Joshua, huh?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yep. And then they said, "Oh, did you know Gary's a channel?"
There you go.
She goes, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So I had to own up to it. I had to
Did you
step
say,
out.
oh, that's a
How
long
was
story. I'll
that?
talk about it another time? or-
Yeah, right.
How was that? Like, did you?
No,
feel
it's fine. I'm
fun?
getting so comfortable now. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5
Yeah.
years ago, I've been like, oh, don't tell anyone. But now you can tell anybody. I'm fine. Deborah Jo made me cards, Joshua cards.
Mm.
It says, on the card, speaker, writer, channel.
Right behind you.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, Mark, do you have a quote of the week?
Yes, I do. Okay. Who you think you are is not who you are. This is due to the structure of physical reality. You have an identity. We call it your persona. Your ego guards against the loss or injury of the persona, just as the survival instinct guards against the loss or injury of the body. The ego tries to protect the persona. It is a survival mechanism.
Yeah, it's we've been talking more about the persona and the ego this week in different questions, and maybe even Joshua Live. And it's an interesting thing because the way Joshua explains how the ego works, we all create our personas, that idea of who we think we are, and our life really reflects back to us who we're being in that persona. And that persona is a mix of all what you think are your positive aspects and your limiting aspects, right? And this combination. So everyone says, I have my strengths and weaknesses. I'm good at this and this and this, but I fall short here and here and here. And this is your idea of self. And while no matter, everyone has a mix of beneficial and empowering aspects of themselves, even those empowering aspects are limiting compared to who we really are, because we're all limitless beings of pure positive love and acceptance. And so any identification of self is limited because it never matches up to this limitless nature. But how the ego works is the ego says, all right, you're alive with this persona you've created. So let's not change that persona, because who knows what's going to happen if you step out of that persona into some bigger persona or some different persona. So the ego defends not only when you're attacked, when someone says, like, if you think you're intelligent and someone calls you out for not being intelligent, the ego is going to stop in and defend you by like making them wrong or whatever it is. And but also it protects the limited version of yourself too, because that's the thing that says stay safe. And that's why when you get an inspiration to take some action, you feel this fear popping up, and it's the ego that pops up the fear, says, no, you can't do that, or who do you think you are, or people think you're strange, or worry about this, that, and the other thing. And that's what causes us to live more limited lives. And so if we can understand what the ego is really doing, we can say, well, that's just part of this mechanism, and we don't really have to worry about it. Joshua was saying that your ego is like really limited, and it's like looking up from the sole of your shoe to who you are, while your inner self is looking at you from the heavens or from the non-physical, from this very high perspective, limitless perspective. And so that's what you want to align with, not the ego, but with your inner self.
That's good. Well said.
That's pretty cool. It really makes you say, okay, I understand what the ego's doing and it's not going to affect me.
Well, if it's that easy, but I mean, or you could say, yeah, I really understand what the ego's doing and I got to process whatever's going on right now. Too. Yeah.
Well, when you feel like you've been questioned or attacked or whatever, you can understand that the reason you have the response or this reaction negatively isn't because it means anything about you. It's just this ego popping up to protect this idea of self. And as we let loose of that idea of self, we become more playful with it, or it becomes more malleable. And so your persona becomes more fuzzy and out of focus. You see people with super rigid personas, like, say, I don't know, someone who's got this really big ego. And you can't say, well, Trump. Is Trump? Because you can see Trump, his ego's reacting by lashing out back at them on Twitter or whatever it is. And it's the ego defending this idea of who you are. Because from that perspective of this really rigid persona, you perceive the attack, the only thing you can do is attack back and make that person wrong. Because they can't be right. If they were right, then that persona has to be diminished. So if you had a super flexible persona, you wouldn't care. It wouldn't matter to you what anyone said, right? It wouldn't matter to you much less. And you might get the initial urge to say something back, but you could probably catch yourself and not do anything.
Yeah.
What about the idea of like going, trying new experiences, like being around a lot of new people or just new experiences, like the one I was talking about, like the level 1, and feeling like you might be judged or on your performance. So that fear is what your ego protecting you, like you feel unsafe being seen or being out there and maybe being judged, right?
Yeah. So I took the Joshua Live that we did yesterday and I made a bunch of little clips. And a bunch of those clips were about moving out of your comfort zone and getting comfortable with that uneasy feeling. You are absolutely inspired to go to that event that you went to and step out of your comfort zone to be a trainer instead of a student. And that brings up this uneasiness because the ego is trying to protect who you think you are. And you're sort of stepping out beyond who you think you are to engage something you're inspired to do. And so fear will always pop up, and that fear causes this uneasy feeling. And so Joshua was saying, get comfortable with this uneasy feeling, because as you continue to step out of your comfort zone, you'll feel that uneasiness more and more and more of the time. So if you get limited by that fear and don't act, right, then you're just succumbing to the fear. And you feel this inner conflict and this stress because you're not moving towards that life you intended to live. You're living a smaller life, and that conflict is very, is stressful. It gives you anxiety. But also moving out of your comfort zone to do these big, bold things, that's another fear, that's another uneasiness that you have to work through. And that's all done by processing as you're doing it. Because once you do it, though, you get confidence in doing it. And that's the confidence makes it easier to push past the fear in the future. And, and if you're aligned with, if you are on top of your game and you're aligned with where your life is going and what you want to achieve and what you want to accomplish and who you are meant to be, and understanding this just irrational fear. No one, who cares if they judge you? They're not going to kill you. It's not like they have pitchforks.
Even though it feels like, even though for me inside my body, it feels like they're going to kill me. Like it's like, I mean, Well, because the ego's job is to protect us. And so all of the alerts start going off inside of me, like the same as the nervous system would set it off if there was a lion.
Yeah.
It can be intense.
Yeah. So Joshua had this other analogy. You're living in a village in Africa and you're going down the path to get water from the well. And in the distance, you see a lion. And so you say, I got to turn around. I got to change this condition. I can't, there's a lion there could kill me. And so you turn around and go back to your hut. And so your mother is there going, what happened? Why didn't you get the water? And you're like, I saw a lion. And she's like, there's no lions here. What are you doing? It's like that lion is not really a lion. It's just this illusion that there's a lion, this illusion of danger.
It's your projection of fear.
Right. And you think it's real.
Right.
And so your path was to go get the water, and you saw this illusion of a lion, and so you acted on that fear and you turned around. So you never got done what you wanted to get done, was the water. And so if we keep on our path and then having this illusion of fear and then turning around and going back home, we're never going to get what we intended to get. We're never going to go along that path.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have to understand the difference between rational fear and irrational fear. And if you're inspired to do it and it's an irrational fear, you have to sort of get good at summoning up the courage to push past that fear to do what you're inspired to do. And once you do it, it's going to turn out for your benefit, because it's a inspiration based in love, aligned with who you really are, moving you one step further on your path to becoming who you really are. Now, sometimes it can send you right into a manifestation event, but that's good too, because that allows you to uncover a limiting belief that holds you apart from who you're going to be. And so this process of pushing past fear. Another analogy was, you feel this excitement before doing something, like before going on a roller coaster. You feel that excitement when you're in line or when you're in the car going up the first hill, and you feel the exhilaration when the ride's over with and you've conquered your fears, So that's that excitement leading you towards the ride, and the exhilaration once you've overcome the fear to take that step. And so if you can go through this process of getting excited about something and moving towards something and then just pushing past the fear, you'll be in the state of exhilaration or excitement and exhilaration. And that builds confidence. And so now you can go on bigger and scarier roller coasters.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like every time you do it, you have this fear, and then you go and you do it and it turns out okay. And also speaking in public, like speaking in front of people, every time I do it, the fear is less and less. And then I go and I no one killed me. No one judged me. It was okay. It turned out okay. I was more comfortable. And then you kind of get to the point where, I can express myself. I can be helpful. Maybe someone's going to get something from what I'm saying. So you get out of your ego and you get out of that fear. And then you actually get into what you can share, what you're actually sharing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or what you actually, want, what you're actually inspired to do.
Right.
Yes.
And
so it's just a process of pushing through comfort zone and getting comfortable with that uneasy feeling to do what you're inspired to do. Mm-hmm. And that's a process, but when you now looking back, could you even imagine succumbing to fear? And staying home and not doing that? You can't.
You're not staying
I still
home.
do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you say, Carla?
I said, because I still do it sometimes. I still succumb to fear sometimes, like in certain ways. And
Yeah. I mean, but once you've done it, if you look back at the thing you've done, you're always like, what was I afraid of?
Yeah.
From that perspective, which is an expansive perspective, because you expanded through that experience, looking back, the fears seem way less. Like imagine going to a high dive and then climbing up and conquering your fear and going to the edge and then jumping in. Once you've jumped in, you feel this exhilaration. You're like, what was I afraid of? It was so easy.
Right.
Yeah.
That fear before it is so much more intense than how it feels after you've done it.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Like, so when I went to that level 1 training, I stayed with somebody, a roommate, and before I tapped on it, like every little thing that I think of, every fear, I imagined doing it, and then I'm like, oh, it's going to be whatever the projection is, like that projecting something that has not even happened, but having to wait for the bathroom, or when because sometimes I don't sleep all night, so what am I going to do at night, whatever. And then I just tapped it all out, tapped on it. So I get there, and it's fine. We had the best time. So now going on the Law of Attraction cruise, I'm rooming with
Greg.
Yeah, so I have a roommate, and I'm fine with it. Like, so it's like I'm not even projecting any fear about it. I'm projecting fun.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Because I went through it and I did it, and I kind of proved myself that it was fine.
Yeah, and it set you up perfectly for this next thing, the next roommate situation.
Yeah.
It's funny how these things work.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's get into our question from Allyson. Tracy, you want to read for Allyson?
Sure. Dear Joshua, I can't explain how different I feel, how different I am reacting to life and people. You know the drill, I'm sure. So my question is it ego or alignment to be mentally stating over and over, wow, I'm doing good. Look at how different I handled this or that. I'm feeling good, and I'm doing it right because I am so different. It goes round and round. I'm feeling high in the moment on all kinds of decisions, responses, feelings, and I'm crediting the fact that I am reacting to those two things differently. Is this alignment or ego? All of my love, Allyson.
Yeah, so Allyson is in week 7 of the Unlimited Abundance Bootcamp. And so she's feeling a change in how she's being. Very cool. So let's hear what Joshua says. Kylie, you want to read for Joshua?
Dear Allyson, the ego is neither good nor bad. It simply responds to the persona you have created. Your persona is always the more limited idea of self. It is comprised of what you might judge as beneficial and limited aspects of yourself, yet the persona in its entirety is always a limited idea of self. Who you really are is a magnificent and limitless being of pure positive love and acceptance, and so any representation of self falls short of who you really are. The ego will emphasize your beneficial aspects in love and defend your limited aspects in fear.
So the ego will say, I'm so great, and the ego will say, or I don't know, the ego will always prop that up, that more empowered idea of self, and defend any attack on your limited aspects of self. Anything you fear might be limited. So if you fear, you don't know anything about wine, but you're trying to pretend you know about wine, like me, right? I know a little bit about wine, but compared to people who know really about wine, I know nothing. And so if I cared about that, if I thought, well, I'm a connoisseur, then I would respond completely differently in that. So it's funny. A lot of different things you think about. I think my ego is super huge when I was younger. I was just this most rigid persona in the world. And now, luckily, I've relaxed that idea of myself more and more and more. It's an ongoing process. Okay, let's go to the next paragraph.
When you think good for me, your ego congratulates your empowered opinion of self, which is based in love and is true, although still limiting. When you worry about some aspect of yourself, or when you are confronted by your perception of some negative aspect of self, your ego will defend that aspect too. Your ego perceives that who you think you are is right and good because it has enabled you to survive. Your ego does not want you to change your perception or definition of yourself because that brings in risk.
Right, so the ego is there to eliminate risk because it perceives that how you've lived your life based on the persona that you've had has enabled you to thrive, or at least to stay alive. And this might have been a throwback to the times when you were living in a tribe or living in a village, and you really needed the support and respect and admiration and love of others, or you could get cast out if you're being somewhat bizarre and different. And so the ego is saying, keep like this, be like this, be like this, don't change, be like that. It's working so far, but it's really always limited compared to who we all are, which is this limitless and magnificent expression of love. All right, next one.
If you want to change the more limited aspects of yourself, your ego will want to avoid these changes, and so the idea of unworthiness pops up. From your ego's perspective, the empowered change is risky because it leads to a new and uncharted definition of self. The ego resists all changes to the persona because it perceives the change is risky to the survival of self.
Yeah, so if you maybe were living in a village and you wanted to become the leader of that village, and the last leader was killed because you probably killed him, to become the leader. The ego's like, don't do that. That's risky, right?
Yeah.
But now we can actually live in a time where we can be the most empowered, love-based version of ourselves without any true fear. All that fear that comes up is irrational. So Mark, you can go and we are limiting ourselves so much, all of us. No matter what we think we're doing, we are really limiting. And you see people like Elon Musk, who lives such a limitless life. It's such a great example.
Does he though? I mean, I don't know. I always wonder about people like that. Like, is there some other way where they are limited?
Sure. Yeah, he smoked pot on Joe Rogan, and that was a big deal. So he has to be. He's also can't really tweet what he wants to tweet because he's getting in trouble with the SEC. So there are certain aspects that he has to limit himself in. So he couldn't come on this podcast and talk about what we're talking about because people would think he's crazy.
That's true.
So there's true, but from this perspective of what's possible in life, him and Richard Branson and Lady Gaga, you can watch that Lady Gaga documentary and see how limited she really is too.
Yeah.
You could watch the episode with Esther and Oprah and see how limited Oprah is being. Because Oprah didn't want that to be on TV because she thought it was too much for her audience, right?
Right.
And if you were truly living this completely expanded version of yourself, you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
That's true.
You wouldn't have that fear that was too much. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, we all have our limitations, of course, but we have to understand that we can push past those things. I was answering someone's question on the Abraham-Hicks Facebook group, where this woman said that she had her uncle's Purple Heart and her dad wants the Purple Heart. And she's like, what should I do? And so everyone's saying, well, he may sell it, or you shouldn't give it to him. It's yours. Your uncle gave it to you, and all this stuff. And I wrote, if you were a limitless being of love, pure positive love and acceptance, what would you do then? If you had no fear of loss, what would you do then? You'd just give it to your father. Right? You wouldn't have this fear of the loss. So I think that that's what I'm striving to do, is live in this, just say, okay, if I was a limitless being of love without the fear of loss or without other irrational fears, what would I do in this situation? And that's, I think, a very empowering way to make decisions.
It really is. Yeah.
Wow.
And anytime, like when you're judging, even when you're judging yourself, like what does my inner self think about me? Or when you're judging somebody else, what does my inner self really think about them?
Yeah. Especially when you're judging yourself, when you're being critical on yourself, well, what would my inner self say about me now?
Right.
And we can all tap into that. that is a natural ability that we can all just say, if you just quiet your mind, think that thought, you'll get a thought back. You know,
Totally.
and that thought is going to be empowering.
Yeah.
And we tend not to believe those thoughts for some reason, those more empowering thoughts. We tend to believe the more limiting thoughts.
Yeah.
Until we get more practice.
Because we have a habit of judging ourselves and kind of being negative around. And when we hear something that's positive, or when we consider it, or when we hear a thought or think a thought, we don't trust it because we're not used to it.
Yeah.
And we're not, and a lot of people think that they manufacture thoughts in their heads instead of attracting thoughts. And when you are in a negative state of being, you're just going to attract urges to change the conditions. And those urges might be to control yourself or criticize yourself in order to change who you are, so that this mistake that you perceive happened doesn't happen again.
One thought that I just had, like for us, I don't know, or for people who have been practicing like opening up this communication with your inner self or with that voice, you know, and asking the questions and then hearing the thoughts come in. It does, like we ask it and then wait and it comes right away. But I remember when I hadn't practiced that, the answer didn't always come right away, you know? Right. And so sometimes it takes like a willingness to sit and be still and be quiet and listen for the answers and ask again, you know, and like play with it like a game. Like I remember Kate, when she was in the one-on-one, was talking on a Joshua Live about that, about like asking a question and nothing coming, and then asking again later, and she got back a yes, but that was it. But she was so excited about just that yes, you know? And so like it can be a fun thing to just play with in terms of starting the dialogue with. And that's like the gateway to channeling, or one way of doing it, you know, is just like playing and opening up to that voice.
Yeah, if you take a yellow pad and just, if you write your question at the top of that yellow pad and then just start writing an answer, it's amazing how quickly and fully those answers come.
Yeah.
But it has to be yellow though, right? Or
hold on.
Maybe a different color, or
no, it can be white. It can be white.
Oh, it can be white. White and yellow.
But it requires shutting off the ego too, or at least like quieting or pushing to the side. Yeah. The answers to flow out.
Yep.
No, that's right.
It does.
Yeah. Because then you can say, if you're not getting it right away, you can say, oh, it's not working. Oh, okay. You know, I tried it and it doesn't work. You know,
yeah, I must not have that ability.
My God, if everyone did that when they started surfing, no one would ever surf. Because surfing is so hard at the beginning. You just have to keep going and going and going. Right. You know, it's like anything. I want to be really good at something initially, you know, and that's just not how it works. It just takes a little time and practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been doing Taekwondo with the boys and their dad too. And it's been this really interesting adventure. And because I'm seeing a lot of myself reflected in my kids. Like it was their idea to do it. So we signed it, we found the place and started doing it. And then after the first class, they're like, I don't want to do it. That's too hard.
Yeah.
Oh, is that you, Tyler?
What? That's me with a lot of things, but it's been this really like interesting journey of where sometimes I'm not sure. Like, I mean, they say they've lost interest, so why should we force them to keep doing it? You know, but at the same time, it just is the situation that it is what it is, and so it's where we are. But they're learning to like parts about it. We're all learning a lot from it. But there was this moment where like we learn these series of moves, but the instructor's always up there telling us the next move and counting for us, so we do it like in the same timing. But the other night, he ask the adults to get out and do it on their own, like in their own timing, and just do it from memory. And we'd been like the guys had been practicing a little bit before class, and I tried for a second and then stopped because I didn't have it memorized at all. And so when he like had everybody get out there, he looked at me and I'd started to walk out and he was like, are you confident enough to do this? And like my automatic response was like, oh no. And I took the out and I just like got to the side of the mat, and then I was standing there and they were getting ready to start, and I was like, what am I doing? I can at least try. And so I jumped back out there and did it, because it's kind of like a dance. And so I was just like watching and following along and managed to do it. But like afterward, they called the kids out to do it on their own. And I was so glad that I jumped back out there, because I was messing up moves, you know, and like fumbling along. And they were like, none of the kids had it memorized. And so they were all fumbling. And there was like one little kid that was just like looking like his face was about to crumple. And I was like, I'm so glad that I was willing to like let go of that and just get out there and do it. So they could see that it's okay. Like, you don't have to know. But anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a super interesting thing about starting something and going, it's too hard and quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, I wanted to do judo. And we had moved to this neighborhood and I got in a fight with a kid and I really didn't have any control. You know, he was overpowering me. It wasn't a big fight. We were, 10 years old or something. And so I wanted to take yoga. And so my mom took me down to yoga and then I wanted to quit. And she's like, judo, sorry. I don't want to do yoga. I want to do judo. So I need to do yoga.
Yoga might have been better.
Yeah.
I'm just laughing at the thought of a kid who's being bullied going home and be like, Mom, I got it. Get me in yoga, please. I can't take this anymore.
Chaturanga.
Maybe if I'm just a little more flexible.
I could have weaseled my way out of there. So I took yoga and I wanted to quit. And she goes, you're not quitting. I paid for whatever months you paid and made me go for 6 months. And man, that changed my entire life from then on because I got so much stronger, so much more confident. I could handle myself anywhere. I was never afraid again. There's no one could touch me because I could do, I got to be a yellow belt, which is only one step up from white belt. But I had so much confidence at that age. And plus I was stronger. And so after that fight, got in a fight with that same kid again and just totally overpowered him. It was super easy. And then in the 5th grade, because we moved around a lot, and so I was just very calm and easy with people and had no issues. In the 5th grade, we moved to Michigan. First day of school, we're lined up to go into class outside. It had been snowing, so there's snow everywhere. And so this 6th grader, I'm in 5th grade, the 6th grader comes and tries to cut in line. And I push him out of the line. And then he comes running back at me. And I grab his jacket and do a leg kick and send him sliding down the whole line into a chain link fence. And he crashes into this fence. The entire school saw it, right? And I was like, went from no one to someone everyone knew after that. Made all these.
Don't mess with Gary.
It was this total cool thing that happened because I didn't give up that yoga.
Yeah, I was gonna say all because of yoga.
All because of yoga.
Well, that's the thing with that. Like, if they wanting to quit something, like, and I see this in myself too, where sometimes like I go in to do something and then I'm like, okay, I've seen what there is to see here, and now it's time for me to move on. But then there's other times where it's like, I don't want to do this; it's too hard, and those are very different reasons for quitting and like moving on from something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Huh?
Yeah, it is interesting. It's like, okay, so I've seen what there is in this, but have you really seen it all? Because everything expands so much and you expand to a new level of something. And the finishing of something too is an expansive thing as well. And things take a lifetime too, some things, we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is interesting though, because also we have this thing about finishing something that we started, but if it doesn't excite us anymore, it's okay to not finish it. So
totally.
to know when you're doing it from fear, or if you're excited about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Joshua will say it's, you tug at the thread of an interest till it leads you to another interest. And so you can drop things and keep going as long as you're going to a new interest, to a new interest, to a new interest. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's actually the way you explore. Mm-hmm. But, that whole thing being uneasy when you get into this level, it's also an interesting thing when you really get interested in a lot of things, there are people in that interest who have been there a while. Yeah. And they tend to dissuade you from it because, it's like you go to a bike shop and you just you don't know anything about bikes and you want to get a bike, and there's these bike shop guys who are totally into bikes and they sort of seems like they talk down to you, like, you don't know what you're doing here. You got to get over that hurdle too.
Right.
To get into something.
Totally.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Real quick, I just had a thought that connected to that, because I've seen that with this woman that I've been hanging out with, who's, I think she's she's 20. But so she's just young and fresh. But I've seen that a lot lately, where like as a hurdle of getting over that situation where there's the people who are already established and have all the knowledge. I've been seeing a lot of different examples lately of where not having any knowledge about something is actually an advantage, because you don't have all these preconceived rules and ideas about it. And so you're able to like approach it in this childlike way where you're just like playing with it. And so that's
For
been
sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
to get past that. Because I have that too, like this fear of like, I don't know, or placing myself below people who I perceive to know more than me or something like that. But I've been just getting lots of feedback that it's an advantage sometimes.
You know, I was doing the same thing. Like when I went to level 1, I'm thinking, you know, I'm a new level 4, but there's people who are way more established level 4. And I'm in my mind comparing myself to them. And if I'm giving sessions to somebody, I'm thinking they might have sessions with higher level 4s. And so in my mind, I'm projecting all kinds of, so I'm comparing myself in my mind. And so I had to tap on that too. You know, it's a lot of stuff. Right?
Yeah, you can't compare yourself to anyone outside yourself
No.
because you'll always be looking up, you know, to someone you think is doing better. You got to compare yourself to past versions of yourself.
Right. And the idea of just projecting what other people are thinking, it's just your mind can go pretty crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
that's all yourself.
And then you catch it, and then you go, you know what? They're good because of what they do. I'm good with what I do. Not one person likes everybody. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to like them. And so that's the kind of dialogue that I had going on with myself. Like, okay, this is just, I'm me. I'm doing the best I can. And some people are going to resonate. Some people are not, and that's fine. So being fine with the idea that some people aren't going to resonate with you. And so I guess that's, again, the ego, being okay with not having someone resonate with you, not even someone not even liking you. Being okay with that is pretty empowering.
If you had a super rigid persona, it would be like, everyone has to resonate with me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
In order for me to feel good. And now you have more of a relaxed persona, and you can say, who resonates with me is who resonates with me. And if they resonate with someone else, that's fine. And there's enough to go around for everyone.
And I wouldn't have gotten to that place if I didn't if I didn't go through that experience. You know, if I didn't go through that experience, process it, think about it, and then get to the other side of it, I wouldn't be there. So
Yeah, because you expanded in that activity.
Yeah. Sorry, Tracy.
Oh, that's okay. No, I just was going to say that I felt that last night. We had some friends over, but this one girl I never met before. And here I am in the kitchen, she's sitting down and everybody's talking. And I just got this feeling that she didn't like me, you know?
Yeah.
She just had this face. So here I am assuming, you know, that just by the way she looked, I'm like, oh, she doesn't like me. And I was like, all right, but that's okay if she doesn't like me. Not everybody likes me. It doesn't really matter. By the end of the night, we were best friends. She was awesome. And I was like, you know, why do we think that? Like, you know, we make up these stories in our head. We have no idea what people think about us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we're doing it, it's truth. Like we're assuming like, oh, that's truth. Like that's what's happening. She doesn't like me. Like you don't even question it sometimes. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank God we have the tools to process that.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and we know what's really happening.
So true. So true. Yeah. I thank God for the process, because I get, you know, what do you call that? Tested every day. Every day I'm getting tested.
Me too.
Yeah, everyone does.
People telling me you're this, I can't do that. You're no, you know, all this stuff. And it just rolls off me now. Like I laugh at it when people say things like, you know, I can't do this or I can't do that, and calling me names, you know, bad things, whatever that we perceive. It just makes me laugh now. You know, I thank God for this process.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thank Joshua. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. I think it's if you want.
Oh, okay.
No, think less.
Oh, no, but it's the next one, yeah.
Think less about the ego.
Think less about the ego and only of the fear that is presented whenever you redefine your idea of self. The fear comes forth from the ego. That fear is present in limiting beliefs as well as empowering beliefs. This is why change is difficult for most humans. The ego reinforces the status quo in order to maintain the viability of the self. The self has survived, and so the ego perceives that the continued enforcement of old beliefs is beneficial to the overall survival of the human being and its life. However, in this new time of awakening and awareness, you can make great strides on your path to authenticity when you understand the system and the ego's role in that system.
Right. So we'll always be have fear pop up around anytime we try to stretch our idea of self. And anytime we process limiting beliefs, that fear is going to pop up as well. And so it's just part of the process we have to get used to. But it's nice to know how the system works. It makes it a lot easier, I think.
Yeah, that's the thought I was just having, like when you were talking about how it's a process, because that's what I'm seeing. I mean, there's a lot of talk in the spiritual community or whatever about like getting rid of ego, you know, or some idea that it's even possible to eliminate ego when it's really, what I'm finding is that it's not. Like I can integrate it to a certain extent, but just like fear, it's always going to be there. So it's just a matter of being aware of it when it's popping up, and when like learning to recognize it and even love it or accept it, you know, and then just like move through it, just like the fear, just like it comes up, oh, okay, there it is, I have tools, I can move through it over and over again. But like, but going into it expecting it to someday magically disappear because we've reached this level where it's like, yeah, I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah. We'll reach a level where we'll understand what's going on completely, but it'll still be going on internally. So from the exterior, it'll seem like we don't have an ego, but all we're doing is getting good at processing the fear and analyzing it to see if it's rational or irrational. But also, if you do make your persona more malleable and fuzzy and not rigid, the ego is less powerful, because the ego really stands up to rigid personas or defends rigid personas very strongly. All right, let's go to the next one.
When you perceive yourself in ways that align with who you are making great strides to the life you intended to live, even if the ego comes to life and brings in fear. It really has no power over you. This is why the processing of limiting beliefs and fears is so important. It allows you to take charge of your life, rather than relinquishing control to the ego.
Yeah. And I've heard this a lot, is that 2019 is the year of stride. And 2018 was the year of getting your balance and getting a firm foundation so that you can move forward. And so this is the year where we all make great strides to becoming who we really are. And awesome. I've noticed that word stride coming up a lot. All right, this is the last paragraph.
Anytime you feel good, it is because you are perceiving your life as working out. You are aligned because your inner self's perspective is also that your life is working out. This is only really beneficial because in this state, you are attracting inspiring thoughts and ideas. In fear, you are simply perceiving that your life is not working out. This is only limiting because in this state, you attract urges to change the conditions. So you can see that as long as you are not acting on urges, you are not taking detours in your journey to becoming who you really are and living the life you intended to live. As long as you are presuming that things are working out, you are receptive to inspiring thoughts and ideas. When you take action when inspired, you are always moving along your path to becoming who you really are, and you're allowing the life you intended to live to unfold naturally and easily. That is the design of the system. The ego is irrelevant at this point because now you know how the system works. With our love, we are Joshua.
Yeah. So if you don't know how the system works, you're not gonna really realize what those fears are. And if you don't analyze the fears, you're just gonna succumb to them, as many people do. And that just, nothing's wrong with it. It just is a less or a more limited life than the one you intended to live. And since you're being called to a bigger, bolder life, you will have, if you don't move towards that bigger, bolder life, if you limit yourself from doing that, you're going to have some inner conflict going on, and you'll face some manifestation events that show you what you're really doing, you know.
Totally.
Yeah. And if it's anything like me, it'll be more painful than the ego fears that pop up,
Sure,
Yeah.
to get your attention.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so imagine coming to physical reality, being born into a family where you adopt a lot of limiting beliefs around your worthiness, and then you're being called to this magnificent, powerful, limitless, big, bold experience of life, and yet you think you're unworthy, so you don't act because the fear is so big that, and then you have manifestation events around that your whole life. It can cause this perception of total suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think suffering is you not moving along easily towards the unfolding of your desires because you are succumbing to fear.
And not thinking the thoughts that your inner self would think, and not being who you truly are. Because if you're not thinking the thoughts of your inner self would think, then you're thinking of fearful thoughts, which leads to suffering and fear and feeling victimized in the world and all the above, right?
Yeah, but now we know too much. So now we can look at it rationally. And maybe we won't integrate it perfectly, but at least we know what's happening.
Yeah.
And if you can just feel fear and say, screw it, I'm going forward anyway, then you've accomplished something. That's awesome. That's the new idea of success. It's not attaining things outside yourself. It's moving forward when inspired and pushing past fear in courage. That's success. Absolutely. We watched this this documentary called something Wealth. Do you remember, Tracy?
Is it Netflix?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Netflix. I don't remember.
Yeah, and it's about this photographer who her whole life was really documenting excesses in wealth, excesses in fame, excesses in correcting unwanted bodily conditions,
Oh, wow.
or making yourself look better by surgery, and seeing the ramifications of this kind of approach to life, where you're always seeking validation outside yourself.
Right.
And you assume that if you get rich or if you get famous or if you get beautiful, that you've become successful and you'll feel good. Yeah. And every single one of these people were wrecked because of
that's good.
I
got to see that.
They all wrecked their lives, right?
Yeah.
And at the end, they
generation
said,
wealth.
Generation wealth. At the end, they said it was never outside.
Right.
One guy who had said he bought a 20,000 square foot house and never spent one night in it. He had houses all over the world. He could buy any car, any plane, any yacht. And he's with his wife and he's in this marina and there's like that yacht, that yacht. Which one do you want? Which one of these yachts? And the wife said, all I want is you to put down the phone and have dinner with me.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that shook him up. And he's looking back, at this life where the kids don't talk to him anymore. And he's gone through several wives. And he's basically at the end of his life going, all that pursuit of wealth was a complete and utter waste of time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
It was a really good documentary. There's so many good stories.
It's hard to watch, but yeah.
Oh, really? Because you're seeing people being wrecked, huh?
Yeah. But they all ended up, knowing and realizing that people are the most important thing, not money, and just having these relationships, spiritual relationships, the most important thing to them.
Alignment and becoming who you really are from the inside out is, the new approach to life that is completely, in opposition to how we were raised and how this society works. You think about it though, I've been thinking about this a lot. 100 years ago, the average person had very little control over their lives. They were, maybe a farmer or maybe living in a village or maybe doing, they didn't travel more than 100 miles from their place they were born their entire life. So they didn't really control things because they didn't have the ability to control things. And so look, in the 50s, people went from depression to now they could own a small home, they could raise a family, and they lived in the satisfaction of that, because to them, that was a great achievement. And it was a wonderful life. And living in the suburbs with your family is having a job, having that security, that was a wonderful life. Now we move forward 50 years later or 70 years later, and we have the absolute ability to really create anything we want to create. And in the boot camp, it really goes into a whole lot of time spent on knowing the difference between what you truly want and what you think you want. What you truly want was all those things you intended prior to your birth. You want to express your love to yourself, to all others, to the conditions. You want to experience true freedom and abundance. You want to expand in joy, not in suffering and misery. And you want to explore some more specific aspect of physical reality. But those main four general intentions are the bulk of those intentions. And if you live life just experiencing joy, experiencing freedom, experiencing abundance, experiencing your love and acceptance to others and yourself, and if you got the feelings that came with that, you would live your life in total bliss, and your life would be beneficial, and you'd be moving towards who you really are, and you'd be making a bold, dramatic impact as an example of alignment for others. And that approach to life works perfectly with universal laws and the design of the system. And it allows you to experience what you came here to experience. But if you're chasing things outside of you in order to feel something you don't already feel, those are always going to be empty. It'll never be satisfying. And so I lived in this life when I was building businesses and trying to get appreciation, trying to get approval, and trying to manufacture things outside of me to make me feel worthy. I would get to a certain level of success and it was empty. And so I would push it until it collapsed and I failed. And then I would start again and get to another level of success. And then that was empty, and push it and push it and push it. And always seeking for something more. And this is just the trap you get into. But because we have total control, or a lot more control over our lives now, we tend to keep it going instead of coming back in to saying it's all inside me now, and I'm going to express and cultivate feelings that are aligned with who I really am. Yeah. Even if I don't feel it yet, I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential trappings, we have so much freedom. There's lots of ways to lose yourself, to lots of directions that you can go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the things we think we want, like security, right? Financial security, that's based in lack of financial security. The reason you want it is you don't feel secure now.
Right.
And so you could win the lottery and you would feel even less secure because the money would slip through your fingers,
right?
Because you're not prepared for it. Or you'd be more worried about it being taken from you some way, or you're losing it in some embarrassing way. And so that sense of security that you hoped you would get by winning the lottery is actually more elusive than you think. You have to cultivate that by understanding and having faith in how the system works and who you really are and how magnificent you really are and how the universe is loving and supporting of who you are, and that you never need to feel insecure. Because if you look past at your life, you will notice that whenever you needed it, it came, whatever you needed,
Yeah.
You can prove it to yourself.
One way you can do that is to, whatever you feel like, if you have something like that, okay, if I have a big house and a big car, and then you imagine it and you say, well, what do you think that's going to do for you? And then you imagine, or you conjure the feelings of what you think that will do for you. Well, I will feel pride, and I will feel secure, and I will feel confident. And all those feelings you can conjure now.
Right.
Right. And practice that now within you without having those things.
Yeah. You can manifest those things with effort and struggle and sacrifice, but until you've cultivated it from within, you're never going to feel that feeling you think you'd feel.
No.
But once you do cultivate it from within, then your reality reflects how you're feeling. It's such an interesting thing. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing podcast. Too bad we missed Wendy. She never made it. Did you guys notice?
Yeah. Is she still at the wedding?
I
We should
guess
probably just
so.
head to Catalina. Yeah.
Yeah, she's still, maybe, yeah. Maybe there's no internet at the wedding. Maybe they're doing it in a field somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I think that even if, you know, the bride and groom were walking down the aisle right now, she'd
Right.
at least have her
Still be on.
phone, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Then she could do it. Yeah. She could have done it like quietly.
Yeah.
yeah.
Whispered, yeah.
Right.
She got headphones on, right?
Maybe she was worried that Here Comes the Bride music would be too loud.
And then she doesn't want to ruin the round table. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
true.
All right.
Thanks, Wendy.
Well, hopefully she'll be back next week. We missed her.
We missed
And
Wendy.
the new boot camp is going to start April 29th. If you're interested in that, give me a call, or not a call, give me an email to joshuateachings@gmail.com, and I'll explain all about it. And until then, we will see you from the cruise. We're going to do a roundtable on the cruise.
Yeah.
And that'll be fun, and a Joshua Live on the cruise.
And my roomie, Greg. Sorry, Greg. I had a brain fart earlier. Trying to think of your name.
Yeah,
Greg, my roomie, Greg.
Greg won't care because his ego isn't defined by.
That's right. He doesn't care.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you for being here. It's been a wonderful time. Can't wait to see you again next week. Love you all. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.